question when I asked the audience. Reality Check Dev will be importing image hands tonight, but I just want to check the status of some of the other developers here, like Opera, Part 5250, Devilish, Rocket, Nomad. Welcome all, but we're just curious where you guys are and whether you've developed a Leap Motion application already that may already have image hands, or you're looking to put in, or maybe you're not a Uni developer, maybe you're a Leap Motion JavaScript developer. But we'd just like to know what sort of things you're working on, so we can best answer what you're most interested in. So feel free to type on the channel and say something about yourself. Okay, now let's. We talked a bit about the queues. So how does having a hybrid of AR and VR? So and that could be other stuff as well as your hands being in virtual hands versus the augmented hands. But how does that really enhance the experience?
So we're talking about a hybrid of AR and VR being your hand is augmented reality because it's your hand, and virtual reality because you're in a virtual environment. So it enhances the experience because when you're in a pure virtual environment with nothing, no pass-through, nothing at all, you're creating an entirely new reality that you're putting the users into. And that can be inherently tricky because you're forcing the user to accept an entirely new reality that's completely different than the one that's around them. And unless your design is perfect and you have every little thing tuned perfectly, then it might not be at 100%. Whereas if you kind of mix in a little bit of augmented reality, if you bring in the user's hands, if you have like a window out into the real world, then all of a sudden you're not creating a new reality, you're modifying the current reality. And that can be a lot more forgiving on how the brain perceives what's going on. Because we're putting a person into a situation that is not physically possible, where they're flying through space or something. By introducing a little bit of reality, it kind of ties it back to something that the brain can understand. It can see your hands, your hands, and it anchors you to the real world, and you can accept that everything else is similarly real. And that fusion of augmented reality and virtual reality gives you the power of immersion that the real world offers, as well as giving you the power to create a virtual world as dynamic or rich as you want.
All right, so we have a question here from Kraken, who asked, has Leap had a lot of interest from VR AR headset makers wanting to integrate Leap into their devices? Sure. So first off, I'll talk about some integrations. It's a non-AR integration, a non-VR integration. This is the Leap Motion HP USB keyboard or laptop integrations. This is one of our early integrations. So we're integrating devices, non-VR devices. So you can buy a Leap Motion keyboard, which you can type on as well as use swipes mostly for desktop usage. But in the VR world, among deals that we have announced, so the Razer's building the OSVR headset, open source VR, and we're in a Leap Motion. There's the upgraded pack will have the Leap Motion integrated into a plate that you just snap on. You can even snap off for the headset. So that's one deal, and we're hoping to integrate into more headsets. We would like to be the fundamental input for all of virtual reality. So that should, with our plans, that's just the beginning. I think you also mentioned the Dragonfly prototype. This won't be used in the Razer headset, but this has more features that we're working on, not just in this prototype, but in our hardware roadmap, which go into better things like VR. You can see your hands, but once you go into augmented reality, well, if your hands are in black and white, there's some you'd like them to be in color. So Dragonfly can put your hands in color, which then you really know that they're your hands. In addition, there's other augmented reality cues like seeing the world around you as well, so you don't crash into things, which can be disorienting when you're in the world of VR.
And I'd like to interject with a quick, very useful use for integrating augmented reality into a virtual reality environment. Exactly along those lines of not running into things. One of the common things that we do in some of our internal demos is, even if it's a completely virtual experience, and we're using image hands, and you're like, I don't know, in a crate facility or whatever, we have a very thin layer of pass-through that's in front of everything. So that only like the top 50% shows up, and then we overlay that 10% over the scene. And what that means is that in general you're not really noticing it because it's only the top 50%.
Is just make the hardware better. So we always work on ways to improve field of view and the range through algorithmic or as well as hardware changes, and that may be more viable than adding two devices for VR. With desktops and rooms, it's another story since I guess there's always more space in the room, and some people may want to just make these like mega rooms for VR. But yeah, sorry, not for VR, for I guess for interaction rooms where you just kind of go in and interact with things, possibly in a non-VR world. But yeah, it's definitely something we're working on, yeah, good question. All right, we have another question here. Would it be interesting to use Leap Motion with finger skateboards as a controller to a skateboarding game? Oh, this would mean, okay, so not walking, but leaning on your fingers like that. Okay, what do you think of that, Alex?
I think that would be definitely very possible. And that kind of, there's a common limitation. You can only track hands that you can see, but you're never going to be playing with a skateboard that you're like looking away from something that you're skateboarding. So it's definitely very viable. And what was it was like a craze like 10 years ago. It was like Tech Deck or something. You remember? I don't know.
I'm not a very good gamer.
Oh, it wasn't a video game. It was a physical thing. You could actually buy like little tiny skateboards. And you could kind of skate them around with your fingers. It was Tech Deck, yeah. I think it would be very interesting to try to kind of recreate that in a virtual environment, especially in an augmented environment where you're using a virtual skateboard to skate around an actual your actual table, your actual areas, and that kind of opened the way for impossible stunts like you fly up into the air and you like throw it and like gravity slingshots back to your finger. In virtual environments, you can do whatever you want. So that kind of opens the door for a lot of really interesting tricks or experiences that way.
Yeah. One thing this does remind me of, we do have some examples of not just skateboarding with fingers, but there's a walker where you can walk with your hands. That's by Jonathan Selstatic. His screen name escapes me at this moment, but that's somewhere on our forums. There's also a game from our VR, our game jam last year, a non-VR game jam called Ferrari Cops, and you're not a skateboard, but you're a car, so your hand is hands like this, it's multiplayer. So there's a lot of cool non-VR stuff you can do where your hands pretend to be a vehicle or a skateboard of sorts. Mm-hmm. Can the mic be turned up? Very hard to hear. Well, I can move closer to it. Okay. All right. Oh, and Mr. Tabs, it could be the mic, but it could also be the volume on your computer. So just may want to try turning that up. On Windows, if you go to the bottom right corner, there may be multiple settings that override speaker volume. Your speaker volume as well as some other override volumes. So check that. Okay, Sebastian Binet asks, is there a plan for a wireless Leap Motion sensor? Did we get this question last time? I think I'd say this is something we occasionally investigate, and I could say there are trade-offs with wireless. One of the biggest trade-offs is the latency. When we started looking at the time, even stuff like Bluetooth 4 didn't have the latency. We much worse than the experience on top of the latency that we have currently. So that was a concern. Power is a bit of a concern too. And I guess any wireless product has its challenges. So for virtual reality, it's certainly not a focus, given that the Leap will be on the headset, so the wire is really short to the headset. I think that's what we can say with respect to this talk here about image hands. Okay, volume is good, according to Reality Check Dev. Great. All right. Tman0003 asks about our future product plans. Let's see. There's limits to what we can say on a Twitch talk about our future products. We covered some things that we've worked on. at the earlier talk on how the Leap motion sensor work. We mentioned Dragonfly here. This is not a product here, but this shows some of the potential for things like color. I think we mentioned Meadowhawk. This is an automotive demonstration module. So with automotive, should be automotive grade. Should be big and reliable. But this thing has particularly a lot of LEDs because it has to work in sunlight, since usually people don't drive indoors. So yeah. So we're working on a number of those things, and our biggest focus now is virtual reality. So as we mentioned, the Razer OSVR headset is in our roadmap. Should be released sometime this year as a dev kit, and we're looking to be the input mechanism for all virtual reality headsets. So if our plans really went the way we want, our future plans would include just being in every virtual reality headset. All right, looks like we have no more questions from the channel. Let's move on to our script here. Okay, let's see. We have a question about how does the ability to pass through or disappear behind objects change the experience?
Right. So that draws back to the kind of the sense of immersion. If I have like an object and I'm moving my hand around it, behind it, up and down. If this is just a simple overlay on the screen, no matter where I move my hand, it'll still show up in the front, and that's no good. That breaks immersion and doesn't make sense. And so it's not you have no sense of like, oh, is my hand behind the object? Is it in front? We kind of lose the sense of depth, and it just all falls apart. But by having an object that actually exists in the 3D scene but is also your hand, you can put it behind an object and it will disappear like it should, or you can kind of partially occlude it and it'll disappear where it should, and you can bring it in front and it'll be in front like it should. It's just trying to mirror what would actually happen as much as possible, so that it appears to your brain as though everything's as it should be. Kind of fooling your brain into thinking that this virtual object that you're interacting with is actually real. Because the more that we can, make that experience as seamless as possible, the better experience it is. And so, just in general, making your hand respond to objects in a physically accurate way is going along the direction of making it more seamless and intuitive.
Great. Okay, we suddenly got 3 questions on the queue. I'll answer them in reverse order. So Travels by Fire asks, could we add Leap Motion to the car dashboard? So remember our prototype automotive module. We'd have this to use for CD radio controls, and definitely, as we've demonstrated to our partners, we've been seeing our partners who demo at CES. Yeah, that's most of the focus is on stuff like controlling your music, and that's sort of just the beginning. We start with simple stuff. It's safe, but eventually people want to have a full heads-up display that you can interact with any sort of content, whether it's your maps or just checking on your kids at home, or maybe Skyping for the passenger seat. So yeah, there are no limits to what you can do in the automotive world. Unfortunately, the automotive world does move a bit more slowly than some things in consumer electronics, since these things need to be qualified and then planned out several years out. But yeah, there's a lot you can do there. Okay, question goes back to. Okay, let's go back to multiple devices. So T-Man003 asks about the idea for a more complete grid of leaps, kind of like a mini version of what they did with Vive. For those who, some of you may have heard of Lighthouse, and how you can track multiple objects in an entire room. And I believe T-Man003 is asking about how we can use multiple leaps to do a similar effect to track multiple objects in a room, or at least have the person walk around and their hands can be tracked anywhere. Some have looked into this. So this is more. So as you mentioned, for multiple devices, you could get more accurate tracking, or you could just increase the range. So for increasing the range, you can use multiple leaps. In fact, some people have done this by, you can plug in multiple leaps, they put them in virtual machines, and just unify the area. That's an easier problem than improving tracking. So that can be done. It's not a virtual reality focused thing, unless, I guess, if you're moving around that room with a headset as well. But then if your leaps on your headset, those other leaps don't help so much. But yeah, this has been experimented with. It just may not be a big focus for our virtual reality, where we have other solutions to keep the leap next to you, like it just being there. Next question comes from, oh, great. What are we most excited about? This is a 2-part question for Reality Check Dev. So yeah, let's do part one. What are you most excited about when it comes to the current VR challenges?
Let's see. What are we most excited about? What are we excited about as Leap Motion?
Yeah, as Leap Motion.
Let's see.
Or even what are you most excited about? And I'll give mine for
Okay.
that.
Let's see. Probably what I'm most excited about is the ability to extend normal interactions in ways towards natural conclusions that are not physically possible. So kind of thinking back to the tech deck example, or various other examples. It's really it's hard to say. It's really fun to be able to interact with an object in a way that you would expect. You can grab a sphere and move over here. You can touch things like you would normally expect. But then to extend it out into things that are impossible is really what makes the experience really amazing for me. And so just kind of pushing the boundaries of what is possible to put someone into a space and have them, have an experience that's like nothing that could ever be experienced before is really what makes me excited about VR and AR.
Yeah, for me, probably because of what I work on, I'm most excited about mobile virtual reality. So I think I held this up earlier. Here's a Samsung Gear VR 1. So my Leap has dropped out of it, but you can put the Leap in there. But yeah, the challenges with mobile VR, there's enough challenges even without Leap Motion, but a lot of those are being solved, and Samsung may have a product in the coming year, a consumer product. They certainly have a dev kit now. And yeah, using Leap Motion for mobile VR excites me. For virtual reality, for me, it's a lot about sharing that experience. Like I like Google Cardboard, just the ability to just take it off, put it on someone without saying, "Come to my house and hook up all these cables on you." And to me, Leap Motion is the only solution where you can share a hand tracking thing. The competitors like Lighthouse, well, we're going to have gloves or something on there. Or 6 Sense Stem is this big heavy thing, so I'm not going to put that in your back to share it. So to me, yeah, using Leap Motion in mobile virtual reality, so we can share virtual reality and just see people moving their hands around, not just saying like, "Oh, I'm limited to this thing here because that's all Gear VR can do." Like that excites me. And there are challenges there are from a performance perspective and power perspective. Those challenges that can involve improving our algorithms as well as using the right hardware, the right coprocessors to work on mobile devices. So that excites me. All right, let's go on to part 2 of Reality Check Dev's questions. So what did we expect to see during the Indiecade that didn't get made? Let's see. This is referred to our first jam. So yeah, Indiecade sponsored the first Leap Motion game jam. This was not a VR jam. This was a general Leap Motion jam. Although some projects were virtual reality, and that was great. So and some of the top winners included, let's see, there was a Sleepy Hollow game that had some of this non-photorealistic rendering. There was I think one of the winners was Weightless, Spending Time in Space, and Elemental Ghost Story, which we talked about here. That was one of my favorites. Now in terms of what didn't get made, especially when I looked at the winners and like who do I want to win, I felt there was a lack of productivity apps. I felt like it was a lot of games. I mean, it is a game jam, so that might be why. But when we ranked the winners, there was at least there was at least some people attempting to make a productivity app, but it seemed like it was that guy versus 99 other entries, which were all games. So I wish I'd seen more there, just like virtual touchscreens, or there's most of our time, at least for me, I don't play games most of the day, so I'd like something to help me, outside of games, whether it's my work or just interacting with computers, but not playing games. How about you, Alex?
I was not around when the Indiecade was going on, so I have seen very little of what was going on during the game jam. I remember playing Weightless, and that's about the extent of it. Mm-hmm. I myself do play games basically all of my free time, so I think what I'm looking for from game jams in general are just using the Leap in a way that kind of forwards Leap as an input device in general. And let me elaborate on that a little bit more. The Leap itself is a very powerful input device. Like Kraken had made a comment here talking about how when anyone puts on an Oculus or a virtual reality device, they immediately hold up their hands and they say like, oh, okay, that's right, I don't have my hands. I don't have my hands in VR because I'm wearing a giant camera on my head. But just the fact that everyone immediately picks up their hands and tries to see their hands just shows how important it is to be able to interact with things using your hands when you're in a virtual space. And so I just love seeing all of the different unique ways that people, both in games and also applications as well, just manage to incorporate using your hands, interacting with the application in ways that make sense and are interesting and are fun. And that's not a comment that was something that was missing from Indiecade. It's just something that I like to look for in search in general.
Okay.
Do you guys want to do the demo and then get back to questions?
Yeah, let's do the demo.
Okay.
It's better to have pictures here before we talk too much about it.
All right, so this is an internal demo that I've been working on for a little bit, and it is we're going to be using it to showcase how the image hands kind of work and function. So I'm in this kind of frosty environment, and because I'm in augmented reality, I immediately just a second. The Oculus is not calibrated right. There. Bear with me just a second.
Yeah, press a screwdriver for that. Your VR has this little dial thing. It makes it easier.
You can use a key.
Yeah, maybe the consumer version of Oculus will have a easier way to change the focus.
All right, there we go. All right, so I'm in a kind of foggy environment, and immediately you can see that if I look to my left, I can see James over here.
And hands too.
And that's the kind of what we call the thresholded overlay. So in general, I can see the scene, but anything that is bright kind of goes its way into the scene, so that I can be aware of things that are around me. And then since this is VR, I immediately want to put my hands up, and so I bring my hands into the scene, and they are visible. And these are my hands. It's completely responsive, and when it doesn't matter what my hands are doing, I can still visually see them, and they're my hands. And then the second thing that you notice is that it has this kind of very soft blue glow around the edges, and that's to show that these hands are being tracked. If I bring them in at a very strange angle, you can still see them, but they're not being tracked. And that's another part of the threshold overlay, is that you can still see your hands no matter what, even if they're not being tracked. And that's really important, so that if tracking fails you for half a second, you're not like, oh wait, where did my hands go? So we have hands, and we managed to get them reflecting into the water. That's kind of a custom hacky effect, but it's all about increasing the immersion. And I want to interact with something like this sphere. I can put my hand behind it, I can put it in front of it, and it interacts properly in terms of occlusion and things. Put my hand underwater, and it interacts properly. And this is all just an example of how increasing the immersion is all about increasing the way that your object interacts with the world in a realistic way. Every level that you add that puts your hands into the scene really just increases the level of immersion, increases the level of believability, so that when you interact with something, it's completely fluid. You can just okay, yeah, let me just grab this and move around, and it's completely fluid, and there's nothing that stops you from feeling the experience.
Cool. And you want to maybe we can answer some of these questions while you have it on.
Okay.
It's visual. So how can developers utilize the glow confidence for testing while they're prototyping?
Okay, so one thing that we get by having this augmented hand is that this glow is controlled by the game software. So based on confidence, you can change the amount that it glows, and you can kind of so that's not that's not 100% working right now. But one thing that can be done, I believe this works in the core assests. This might be an old build. But the glow can be based around confidence, and so the less confident that the hand is, the more the glow kind of fades to gray, and that gives the user a very clear knowledge. Blue, that's tracked. Gray is not tracked, and so as it fades between blue and gray, you kind of get a sense of how well your interaction is going to be, and it kind of leads users to making gestures that are very solid, very powerful, and you can kind of use that glow to your advantage to give immediate feedback.
Yeah, that answers how it helps for feedback on the tracking confidence. Very useful. Okay. Okay, now this may be a harder question, but what are the UX or UI design implications for this asset beyond just hands?
Right. So. That references back to what I was talking about before. The tech behind the image hand.
Feet, no. We don't track feet at this time because, we focused on things like hands and tools that matter a bit more in virtual reality. Feet have applications like Dance Dance Revolution outside of virtual reality. But we do provide an image API. So if you would like to track feet using, say, an open source algorithm, via OpenCV, you can do that. Use your image API, plug it in, and that won't work as it's not optimized as well. You may need a very powerful computer, but you can experiment and try to improve things from there because it's an open. The image data is available, and you can use some open APIs and try that out, even if it's not our focus because we're focused on virtual reality. And someone else asked about tracking various tools or boxes, and when we say tools, we generally mean straight tools like pens or a screwdriver. We don't track boxes at this time, and our recent releases haven't focused on tool tracking since virtual reality has often been more about hands, but that functionality is still in there, and in some ways it can work better than hands just because it's in some ways an easier problem for straight objects. So that's still there. You have to check a checkbox, but straight tools are still there. All right, let's answer a final image hands question in the script before we go back to the questions that aren't so virtual reality or image hands related. So, Alex, where do you see image hands going next? What sort of enhancements do you really want to see?
Well, one enhancement that I would really like is it kind of relates to the ability to see my hand in the reflection. So all of these effects are based on the images that the Leap device provides. What that means is that I have my hand, I can look at it. If I wanted to look at it from a different angle, I wouldn't be able to because I can only see it from the point of view of the Leap device. And so one thing that I would really enjoy would be the ability to map this image onto an object so that I could look at it from any perspective. And that's that would allow us to do proper reflections. It would allow you to more easily see things from a different view. If you're doing a multiplayer game, you could actually see the hands of another person properly. Their actual hands instead of a robot hand. That's kind of one direction that I'm excited about. Just kind of improving the way that hands are brought into the scene such that different limitations and different issues can be resolved to the point where we really just make the boundary between virtual hands and real hands basically indistinguishable. And then the other thing is that I would really just be interested in exploring the amount that image hands can be used to interact with things to increase the immersion. Up till now, we've been using robot hands and things, but as soon as you start, allowing the hands to be real, that really opens the door for a lot of really more immersive experiences in that way.
Great. I think the last thing I'm supposed to mention here, let's see the right link here. Yeah, view form. Okay, so there's the Leap Motion hands-on VR challenge. This is it's like a mini jam due June 23rd. So I'm just learning about it now, but I mean, game jams are awesome. So if you're interested in making a project from scratch or even just adapting an existing project, really easy to just drag your hands in. You can join this jam and have a chance of being a winner. And the prizes are somewhere here, but beyond the prizes, just it's an amazing way to just if you have a great app like say let's say After Effects Element.AL Ghost Story, which is in their previous jam. Not only was he a winner, but we can reconnect the developers successful and help you with your next stage, which could be even another jam, or you may be involved in some of our demos as well. So yeah, I highly encourage any of you developers to look at this hands-on VR challenge and see if you can put together a submission by June 23rd. All right. I think we covered most of the image hand questions. Maybe, Alex, let's take off the headset now and get back to normal Twitch mode where you can see our faces here.
All right. There we go.
All right. So while we focused on image hands, there was a backlog of a few other questions. So hopefully Sebastian Binet's steering problem was resolved, according to Reality Check Dev. Great. Okay, so let's go a bit back here. So Mr. Tabs asked, does tracking work well in low light situations where the subjects need to be well lit? So low light, we actually do great because this is active infrared, as they call it. These LEDs are blinking several hundred times a second. Yeah, we work fine in low light conditions. That's different from other track situations that may use like a webcam, where you turn on the light, the webcam can't see anything, or any visible light camera.
And isn't it true that even in pitch darkness, we'd still be able to work completely fine because we're providing our own light?
That's correct, yeah. In fact, we actually probably work best in pitch black. Now, we have a harder time in heavy light conditions. We're still better than things like the First Connect. So sunlight, that could conflict with our, if the sun is brighter than what we're shining, that can be a problem. But we have solutions against that, such as robust mode, which we talked about in an earlier Twitch talk, and as well as in this automotive module, just add more LEDs. And there's a number of other algorithmic and as well as hardware improvements to deal with heavy light or bright sunlight or bright halogen lights. All right, let's see where we go back in the questions here. Stream problem resolved. All right. I think we have covered. Tactile feedback from Lotusmith. Okay, so that one difference between gloves is gloves like Control VR. You can create little things that vibrate on the edge of your fingers, and maybe there's some other solutions out there that even shock you or whatnot on the gloves. Maybe I'll have Alex speak to this because a lot of people have said it in different ways about the experience, especially with image hands. It actually does relate a lot to that. So
right. So one thing that people have noticed is that the more that something is immersive, the more that your brain kind of tricks yourself into feeling that you're actually touching something. And one thing that a lot of people have reported is that when they're using the image hands and they touch something, they can kind of feel a little bit of tingling. And that's obviously not really a proper tactile sensation, but it just goes to show that a really powerful experience can actually elicit an actual feeling without actually having a tactile vibrator or whatever attached to your fingers. And moving past that, like actually providing a tactile sensation, I think that providing something that shows whether or not you're touching something or whether or not you're performing a gesture is something that's really powerful. Our hands are built for touching and feeling things, and so being able to provide that kind of feedback is really valuable. And there's a couple ways that you can get around that by not having actual tactile feedback. Like, for example, if you want to do a pinching gesture, you're providing your own tactile feedback. You know exactly when you're pinching and exactly when you're not because you can feel your own fingers. visual feedback is also a really powerful way. If you make your visual feedback very, very spot on, then by simply visualizing that something's happening when you're doing a gesture or a motion, then again, that just forwards the feeling that you're actually interacting with something. And I guess a good example of that is the intersection effect in the core asset hands. You put your hand into something, it highlights the intersection, and even though you're not actually feeling anything, it just goes that one step further and kind of shows something's happening. You should be feeling something, and you kind of do.
Okay, yeah, great. And I guess one thing when I with Plasma Ball on our gallery a year or so ago, yeah, that feeling, people would really report that feeling of like feeling like there's a plasma ball there, or something was they were feeling on their hands, and the effect was the visual effect, but also the sound effect was like this humming sound of the plasma ball as well. So, so yeah, there are things once you get 3 or more senses working together, you can have to feel this phantom object there. So I think our current assets don't really give you any sound for interacting with objects, but that could be direction we take it, or maybe you could try that out and see where that goes. Kraken points out that Glove 1 has haptic feedback work with Leap Motion, right? Glove 1 is a glove that works with other sensing devices like Kinect or Leap Motion. So the haptic feedback's on there, whereas the tracking is via Leap Motion. And there's actually some tracking in the hands via accelerometers, but accelerometers don't do so well for detecting drift. So it's not just like control VR by itself. Like, what's the point of Leap Motion? Now, there is a point for better tracking. So once you bring in image hands, there's even a point for just like lower latency seeing your hands. So yeah, that's one solution, is to combine gloves with Leap Motion. And one other solution I'll point out here. So there's a company. Let's see if I have the name right. Haptic. It's called Ultra Haptics. So Ultra Haptic technology. So I've linked an article here from looks like last year December, and so people we even have even worked on trying to do haptic feedback via, you could have a bunch of microphones and then sorry, not microphones, speakers, mini speakers, and then try to put that sensation where the object is. The classic things from decades ago could make this very expensive with this array of actuators or basically speakers. But Ultra Haptics has found ways to miniaturize this, and their demo actually works with Leap Motion for tracking, and then using their device to have this vibration sensation at any point in space. So that's sort of a combined Leap Motion and haptic feedback solution that doesn't require wearing any gloves. And their current demo is not in virtual reality, but eventually when this gets even smaller, which is what they've kind of demonstrated, that it's a lot smaller than it used to be, you could see that possibly even on a headset where you can feel your hands. All right.
We got 2 minutes?
We have 2 minutes. Looks like any questions in the backlog? Let's see. Problem resolved. All right. We covered feet not working and tool tracking. All right. I think we've covered our backlog, but if you guys have any questions, why don't you just post them in the channel now? A couple new users here. Unfortunately, we didn't hear from Pizixta or Punkerella Summers or the Keefe. But yeah, we'd love to hear from developers. If not here, so you can always check out the forums at community.leapmotion.com. All right, maybe we could wrap up early then. All right, are we supposed to press a button here?
No. Question.
Oh, question. Oh, any future plans for Twitch streams? Maybe you could answer that.
Always check our community forums. We always launch what we're going to do then. It's every 2 weeks. So you can say that.
Always check our community forum? Okay. Yeah, it'll be in okay, probably every couple of weeks. So yeah, check back on our forums. So gesture assets. It's hard to answer in a minute or so, but yeah, gestures versus widgets. You can say what we're adding and what we're updating.
I'm not actually aware of any updates to over widgets or gestures in general.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one thing to clarify is that gestures is kind of our old API that didn't interact with the world that you'd say, like, here's a tap and here's where the tap is. But widgets work better where you do require the object to be there, and there's a model even using the physics engine. And those are widgets. They kind of replace gestures in a way. They do require a full engine, or at least part of an engine, but they work well. And the current widgets we have, I mean, it's yeah, it does pretty much everything you need. But if you need more, post a link on the forums, and we'll talk about ways we can modify those or extend them, and that not just for widgets, but for anything. We'd love to hear your feedback and see what you need.
And then you got a couple last minute questions. One directed at Alex.
Sorry, VR device was already answered. The Razer OS VR headset, Leap Motion, will be a part of that. So that has been answered. And you're going to be on tonight, Alex.
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Okay.
Trials by Fire is a friend of mine.
Okay, all right. That's a wrap.
All right.
Thanks, guys.